It's no secret people aren't happy with Dead by Daylight right now. There's lots of voices that are complaining about the state of the game, and with good reason. The game is currently filled with long-standing bugs that haven't been fixed for, in some cases, years. The overall amount of content has been drastically reduced. Promises of change being left unfulfilled. Changes made on PTB that are so controversial they never make it to the live game. And even just baffling decisions like the palette density update that was framed as a quality of life feature but made it so, at first, killers had to deal with an overabundance of pallets while now making it so survivors have to deal with the scarcity of them. All of these issues are confounded by the fact that we are supposedly in Behavior's big quality of life initiative. How is the game in such a state despite an ongoing Operation Health? Well, today we're going to try and figure out why. We'll go over the Operation Health and all it's added thus far, examine why it's currently leaving a bit to be desired, and finally I'm going to give some of my opinions on how it could be course corrected or improved. Hopefully then we'll be able to figure out why Dead by Daylight's Operation Health is failing. To start off, let's go over where it all began. The initial Quality of Life Initiative, or more colloquially referred to as Operation Health, roadmap was announced on the 7th of February. It was created with the aim to address many long-standing concerns and frustrations Dead by Daylight players have been experiencing. When first announced, this was a dream come true to a lot of players. DBD is no stranger to bugs and issues, and a health chapter had long been talked about but few thought it would actually happen. The initiative involved reducing content to focus on the aforementioned issues the game has. It was just in time to prepare the game for the huge influx of players the FNAF chapter would bring. And despite the current view of the initiative, it had a pretty good start. In Phase 1, plenty of truly great features were added that were almost universally agreed to be good additions. These features included things like the ability to surrender and leave games with no penalty when one side is clearly won, stopping toxic players from forcing other players to bleed out instead of ending the game, gamma settings to help the game be more playable without using external filters, collision being removed from Survivor with crows to stop them being held captive by griefers, made survivors consistently spawn together to make it so the start of the game is a little less up to chance, add a new blood point bulk spending system which saves so much time making leveling up a breeze, and even redid the whole quest system to make it so you can do multiple quests per match without the need to select them beforehand. I think many of these features are great for the game and truly highlight what this initiative should have been about. Unfortunately, as you know because you clicked on this video, something went wrong, and it all started with The Walking Dead mid-chapter release. The Walking Dead mid-chapter release was a disaster, with lots of game-breaking bugs, confusion with the new map, a partnered livestream not being handled too well, and perks constantly being kill switched. It left a lot of players unhappy. Now in fairness to Behavior, they responded to this patch quite fast by releasing an update to the Quality of Life Initiative roadmap. They postponed the following PTB by a few weeks, and even pushed November chapter into the January mid-chapter slot, which was previously unheard of. Despite the rough patch, this quick response seemed like an appropriate course correction. Players were hopeful that the extra time would lead to Behavior getting back on track with the initiative. Unfortunately, this wasn't the case, and the game state has only gotten worse since then. Instead of focusing on the long-standing bugs that render some killers almost broken, Behavior instead repeatedly tried to make a new anti-tunnel and anti-slug system. Despite me personally thinking there were some good in these changes, the general player sentiment was believed that the changes were far too intrusive to gameplay. This led to Behavior not pushing the changes to live. Behavior would then try again to implement a new iteration of the anti-tunnel and anti-slug changes in the following patch, but would meet the same fate. General community distaste leading to them to not push the changes to live. This means that two of the major patches in the Phase 2 of the Quality of Life Initiative have had most of their development time be spent on features that never made it to the live game. Why this is so bad is because both these patches lack a lot of the bug fixes that players were expecting. In fact, it seems that in some cases the game seems even more broken than before. That leaves us with the most recent update, which added very little content while also adding more bugs than they fixed. On top of that, this is the patch where Behavior tweaked the pallet density update to now greatly reduce pallets instead of increasing them, meaning the overly survivor-sided change is now an overly killer-sided change. So what happened? Why was Phase 1 of the health update pretty good, but the second phase has been such a disaster? To me, I believe the biggest misstep Behavior took is not knowing which battles to choose. In this case, I don't think Behavior should have tried to fix tunneling and slugging during their Operation Health. To elaborate, I do think tunneling is a significant problem in Dead by Daylight that needs to be fixed. To me, there are two main fundamental issues with tunneling that make it a problem. The first issue, that I've mentioned before on this channel, is the skill gap between how easy it is to tunnel and how relatively hard it is to counter tunneling. To keep it short, tunneling as a killer is as simple as chasing the most recently unhooked survivor, while countering tunnel as a survivor involves coordinated body blocking and preemptively bringing in anti-tunnel perks, which can be tricky for newer players. I think this is why so many newer survivors attributed tunneling to being the main reason they uninstalled on the developer surveys. My other problem is with how nuclear of a strategy it is. What I mean by this is if a killer tunnels a survivor with no anti-tunnel perks, they'll be able to get them out of the game quite quickly, leaving them with a 1v3, which is such an advantage that the game is basically won early on. On the other hand, if the survivor they're chasing is stacked with multiple anti-tunnel perks, then the game is basically lost for the killer, as they've wasted so much time chasing a survivor and getting little out of it. To me, this makes it a strategy that is overall unfun and even unhealthy for the game. And a quick aside/disclaimer in case I haven't made myself clear, my problem is with tunneling as a concept, not with the people who tunnel. I'm not going to blame you if you tunnel in a match because sometimes it is the most optimal way to win, but I am going to critique it as a concept in the game as I think it leads to unfun gameplay. I don't think tunneling in itself is toxic or mean, but I do think it's overall not very fun. Now, I've just previously said that I think behaviour was wrong to try and fix tunneling in the health update, but I'm just after explaining why I think tunneling is an issue for the game. How does this make sense? That's because my issue isn't that behaviour are trying to tackle the tunneling problem, but more so that they're deciding to do it now. The game has lots of issues such that whenever new updates are released, things that have no relation to whatever was updated will break. I think issues like these need to be addressed first. The main reason for this being is that addressing tunneling is always going to be controversial. It's a topic that always causes heated debates in the community. It's also something that cannot be solved easily, there's no simple fix. Like they've done so far, they're going to need continuous iteration to get it right, and to decide to use a lot of dead time on such an endeavour that has no guarantee will result in a better game, I think is a little silly. Especially considering there are so many areas of the game that need more immediate attention. The game has survived for almost 10 years with the current, for lack of better terms, tunneling and slugging systems, so I think it'd be able to survive the few months left of this quality of life initiative without these changes so the devs can focus on fixing things. So now that I've gone over why I think the current health operation has been failing lately, we can go over what I think they could have done differently and how they should proceed from here. The first thing that I've essentially already outlined is to temporarily park the tunneling and slugging changes. These changes are taking up way too much dev time when there are more pressing needs at hand. While I would like for the devs to eventually revisit these changes, I'm afraid fixing tunneling and to a lesser extent slugging isn't too simple, meaning that the changes will have to go through even more iterations. Simply put, the game isn't in good enough of a state to spend that much time trial and erroring for a solution. The second thing I believe behaviour should do is only focus on things that are guaranteed net positive. What do I mean by this? Simply put, they should tackle issues that they can ensure they won't need to roll back and will undeniably better the game. This includes things like fixing killer bugs, adding new accessibility options and improving the new player experience. For example, despite the many criticisms the new update is getting, I personally think the new scratch mark colours are a great addition, that I can't see anyone really complaining about. They help colourblind people, but also, even though I'm not colourblind, I enjoy using them, as sometimes I think the default orangey reddish colour can blend in a bit too much with the environment. I also enjoy how they've brightened up the auto-haven maps, making it so I'm not squinting at my screen. In addition, I like that they've added so when you press the tab, you can see the match details screen, giving you info that you previously had to pause the game for, making it a little easier to now see your quest progress, the other player's ping, and as well as item and perk descriptions. Though it would be nice if it showed up only when you held tab rather than having to toggle it to make it a bit easier to check the info. On top of all that, they also reworked the settings menu, which I found very handy as it makes everything much easier to find. All of these are great features that, while may seem inconsequential alone, come together to make the game feel much more polished and better to play. Now imagine how many more of these changes we'd have if behaviour used their development time, rather than their 2 attempts at anti-tunnel and anti-slug, or if behaviour decided to not mess with the palette density and instead focus their time on bug fixes. I think the quality of life initiative could be put back on track if behaviour were to focus on adding only these net positive features. What else could they add? Besides the obvious bug fixes, I think behaviour could focus on completely overhauling their tutorial system. While it might not seem so for people who've played the game for so long, DBD can be very hard to get into. The game offers very little information on a lot of its mechanics. Most new players need to either learn from a more experienced player or by watching videos or streams outside the game. They could work on reworking the tutorial to explain things like looping, or even have a scripted event to explain why healing by the hook isn't the best idea, and that survivors should first find some cover. In the ideal world, they'd set up systems that could explain killers' unique powers, whether that be by making so each killer comes with a unique tutorial, or by simply having little videos in game that show the abilities and what they do, similar to Marvel Rivals. Aside from tutorials, they could try and finally fulfill some old promises, like unlinking specific original sets that didn't need to be linked, or they could finally make it so you can see your teammates' perks in the lobby. My main point being, there's plenty of features that behaviour can add to the game that I think will undeniably improve it. Now is not the time to be experimenting when the game's in such a state. As I currently make this video, we're about halfway through Dead by Daylight Year 9. That means that the Stranger Things Chapter 2 will be the last full chapter they're adding until the anniversary. That means they still have plenty of time and flexibility to course correct the health operation if they focus on these net positive changes. I believe if they do, the game will be in a much better state come this anniversary. That concludes all I have to say about the current state of the Quality of Life initiative. What do you think? Do you agree with my takes? Do you think the anti-tunnel changes are really important and behaviour should keep trying to implement them now? Let me know in the comments. Finally, I'd like to ask you to subscribe. I'm currently only 70 subs away from 10k, so I'd greatly appreciate any sub. That's all for now. Thank you, and goodbye.